Hello, everyone. This is the Antimatter Games podcast. I am your host, Chris Jagaris, and with me, as always, Samantha Jennings.
Hi.
And Sir Matthew Blake.
Hey. I'm a knight.
All right, we are going to start the podcast this week with a game I like to call Remake or Remasters. So I'm going to list off some popular games or franchises for you guys, and you're going to tell me whether you think they should be remade or remastered and why. All right? So number 1, Skate.
Ooh. I'm going to say remaster. I don't think, other than putting a new coat of paint on that game, there's really, you don't want to mess with what made it work, Keep all the mechanics, keep everything the same, just make it look pretty.
I'm going to have to agree with you. I played a lot of Skate when it was out on the PS3, and I remember it being a very pretty game, so I don't think much needs to be done to that. 4K textures. Sam, I'm assuming you never played Skate.
Nope, never played it.
Okay. Next game, Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
Ooh.
Remake or remaster?
That one I did play. I played a lot of that one.
Most people did, I think.
Yeah.
Quick and dirty remake. I mean, I don't know, port it to the new engine, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Make it handle, more like GTA 5. But, don't... Shit. To make it look and play like GTA 5.
Remake on that one. I would go with remake on that one.
Yeah. The great thing about Vice City is that the narrative is so good and the voice acting is so good.
Yeah.
You just need that graphic boost and then you're good to go. You don't even touch the story at all.
Yeah, but that graphic boost is going to be so significant and cost so much money. They're basically going to be doing a remake. They're just not going to be changing much. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, more in the vein of what they've done with Resident Evil, where they've left certain stuff out. Don't do that. Keep the whole story, but make it look like GTA 6 is going to look. All right, next one, Metal Gear, Twin Snakes.
I'm going to say remaster.
Really?
Remaster.
Pretty old, man.
Yeah, I know. Remaster it.
Why?
Make it look not as old, but don't touch that game. Don't touch that dialogue. Don't touch that. Even when they made Twin Snakes, they realized that the original recordings, though they sounded fine on a PlayStation, when they switched to GameCube, there was a bunch of hiss and imperfections. So they redid and re-recorded the audio. And if you didn't know that, you going in, you wouldn't be able to notice. Because they did it exactly the same. They got all the voice actors back. They did the exact same thing. They added little bits here and there, tiny little things. Mm-hmm. But, when they made Twin Snakes, they kept it as close to the original Metal Gear as possible, and you have to do that again. So, remaster.
So you'd want to keep the fixed camera angle and not go with the over-the-shoulder third person.
That's something you can switch. I mean, they did a fixed camera angle for the first release of Metal Gear 3, and then they did the subsistence version on the same system, and they just changed the camera angle. I think that's within the realm of remaster. Remake would be you get new crew, if those voice actors aren't available, you recast the voice, maybe you rewrite it, maybe you redo it, give it that Resident Evil treatment, and I'm saying no. Don't do that. Graphic change only.
Kind of off topic, but I think one of our first legit group streams in person should be Sam Plays Metal Gear.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Okay. That'd be great.
Do you have a Wii?
Moving on. No, she doesn't have a Wii, but you have a Wii, so we can use
that's
yours.
true.
Next game, the first Assassin's Creed. Number 1.
Remake.
Remake it?
Yeah, full remake. I went back and played that game, oh god, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and as much as I wanted to play it, it was so old. It was so bad. I tried and I couldn't. I played it for maybe about 5 hours. I was like, that's it. That's too much. but it's got like, it has so much potential to be remade with new graphics, new mechanics. Like if they could update a couple things, because I think in the original one there's only about 3 missions. You're either like pickpocketing someone, stabbing someone, or finding an item, and you just cycle through those 3 things over and over and over again. So switching it up a little bit would be cool, but
Did
the whole
anyone
story is great.
did anyone come across that article that's been thrown in it's been thrown in my face through pretty much every algorithm, or maybe it was on Reddit, I don't know, about the side missions in the original Assassin's Creed and how they weren't supposed to be any?
Oh yes, I do know.
And basically, like 2 weeks before it was about to go out, the CEO's kid played it and was like, "This game's boring." So they made all those really repetitive side missions in 5 days, and then they went from that build directly onto the disc and out to retail. So they had, and they're like, "It's amazing that game didn't just break your system when you put it in, because we had to like add so much in 5 days because the CEO kid said the game was boring and there wasn't enough to do." So they came up with a few generic side missions and just copy pasted them everywhere. And
that makes so much sense. That's exactly what it feels like. They're like, okay, find a flag and then find 900 more of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And apparently that also introduced a glitch that made like 100% completion potentially impossible. One of the Templar assassinations, if you approached him from the wrong direction, he would spawn in before the city that he's standing on does. So he would fall through the ground and die. And it wouldn't count as you assassinating him, but the game would consider him dead. So you'd never be able to like find him again, and you'd never be able to complete that last Templar assassination. So your game would be bugged, and you would never be able.
Assassin's Creed without glitches would not be Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Like, that's just as much a part of the game as the actual game itself.
I mean, the first one is like one of the least broken Assassin's Creeds. Most of the later ones are.
Yeah.
Like, 3 just sucks, but after that, like Black Flag aside, I'd say the 2 after that were super glitchy messes.
Syndicate and Unity were not. Oh god.
Okay, next game. I would say probably tied for people's like overall favorite Final Fantasy VI, remake or remaster.
Ooh.
Have you played 6, Matt?
Wait, like Japanese 6 or North American 6?
North American 6.
Yes. I'm pretty sure. No, wait, that was not. Was that 9?
I'm talking about the one with the opera scene.
Uh.
The one that is canonically before 7.
Okay.
North American 7.
You know what? I don't know.
6 generally is.
I'm going to say
Final Fantasy's all mixed up with Japanese and North
I'm going to say both.
Both?
Both. I think like obviously if they remade it, they're going to go the way of Final Fantasy 7 and they're going to make it all. And as cool as that is, I feel like at the same time, if it's such a dear thing, they should do like an HD remaster, just a quick little sprite work job, you know, make it look pretty. So you have the classic experience, and then float that out. And if people are still really interested, then give it the full Final Fantasy VII treatment and have it here by, like 2035.
Yeah, I can see them doing sort of what, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there was a remaster of Trials of Mana that just came out like a couple of weeks ago. That's,
I heard about
the
that.
original vibe of the game, but just a lot more colorful HD textures, all that kind of stuff.
SpongeBob, Bikini Bottom, Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated.
Okay, next game is Demon Souls, remake or remaster.
Ooh.
I think this is a pretty clear remake, in my opinion.
From what I know of it, I would also go with remake.
I mean, can I ask why?
Why remake it?
Yeah.
Because we already have a Dark Souls 1 remastered. So I don't think we need a Demon Souls remastered as well. I think if we're going to start with the original game that kind of started the whole Souls trend and changed video games forever, probably, do it justice, start from the ground up. Don't change the story and everything, but just I want to see that game in 4K with current controls and smooth combat and all that stuff. It deserves that kind of treatment, I think.
I mean, I would be... The thing about Demon Souls is it was a much harder and kind of like the purest Souls game in a sense. Like, it was the most uncompromising and like, fuck you, play it our way. It had the stiffest death penalty. Like in Dark Souls 3, you die, you just can't summon people. All right? In Dark Souls 2, I think every little death knocked 5% off your health. Demon Souls, one death, your health gets halved until you kill a boss.
That.
What?
Yeah.
I would really take all that out. I would take all of that out. I would keep what is the main spirit of the game and take a lot of what I think was overdone, if not broken, with Demon Souls and make the vibe of it more like Dark Souls 3, just polished and smooth.
So casual.
More user-friendly. Look, if you're going to remake a game for tens of millions of dollars, you're not making it for the minority of fucking hardcore gamers. This is for the large population.
I don't know. I kind of feel like if you're going to take a game that was so known, like that such a defining thing was its difficulty, and remove that difficulty, like, I kind of see like the Dark Souls series as kind of the training up of gamers, so now you can go back and play Demon Souls. Maybe Demon Souls was way too hard as an entry to this, like first entry to the series, but I think that people who have played Souls games since, and Bloodborne and Sekiro, I mean, forget, picking up Sekiro for the first time kicks your ass way more than Demon Souls. Demon Souls, you go in, you're like, look how much health I have, you get killed in the tutorial, and then you're like, oh shit, where did it all go? Because there's like a forced death at the beginning, and then you just sort of like don't get hit. You just can't make a tank in Demon Souls until like later in the game. So
Demon Souls and Sekiro are difficult for two very different reasons.
Yeah, I would actually argue like once you get used to the whole thing in Demon Souls, like, oh, I can roll, I can block, I can parry, I just have to not get hit. The half health isn't a huge thing. Like, you just work it into your build, really. You just prioritize that. At the same time, equipment load and endurance are the same stat, so you don't have two different stats to level up for that. I would want to keep... You can remake Demon Souls, but I would want to keep the slower pace of the combat, and I would want to keep the half-health kind of punishment. Maybe just add more of the... I can't remember what they're called in Demon Souls, because you become a ghost when you die, and you have to reclaim your body. But whatever the thing, like the embers or the humanity, whatever, just make those items more common. Okay. Just keep it to the half health, and keep the bring back world tendency, which
fair to say remake with some tweaks. Next game, Dead Space, the first one.
Oh, maybe just a remaster on that one. I played that one not too long ago, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, and it held up fairly well comparison to other games that came out around the same time.
Dead Space is a good-looking game.
Yeah,
it really is. Yep. Yeah, probably just a remaster. That should be pretty easy.
All right, remaster. Last game, Red Faction.
The first Red Faction?
Oh, yes.
I gotta say remake, probably. Like, it's probably just so dated at this point that there's only so much you could do with a remaster.
Yeah.
But,
just for the audience, me and Matt played a shit ton of Red Faction and Red Faction 2 back in the day. Multiplayer.
Yeah.
I did not.
Deep Rock Galactic really channels some of that Red Faction 1.
Yeah, so I'm going to say remake for Red Faction, 100%. Too old. This is too old. All right, moving on to our community queue. So this is our section where we take questions from our community. We have one from Juan today. So his question is, what game were you excited for but was ultimately a disappointment at release? Sam, do you want to start?
Yeah. this one I feel like pretty much across the board was a disappointment for anybody who had been waiting 15 years for it. Kingdom Hearts 3.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Diablo, but yep. Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts 3 was probably the biggest disappointment. But the closer and closer it came to coming out, I had already known it was going to be a disappointment. It had taken too long to come out. And all of the mechanics, all the things that I know they had been working on, they really just were not enough. Like, they were cool. There were some cool little upgrades to the fights. But it wasn't enough to warrant waiting 15 years for it to come out. And they kind of missed the boat on the nostalgia factor. So like in the first Kingdom Hearts, when it came out, all the worlds you go to, they were worlds of movies that I loved. Like, they were the Lion King. Like, I grew up with the Lion King. Like, they were the Little Mermaid. They were like all these like little like movies that you love.
Halloween Town.
And Halloween Town. Like, I lost my shit when we got there. And this new one, like, the worlds were Tangled. What else? I can't even like remember what they are. Toy Story, Monsters Inc. Like, they were just movies that I'm like, I have no connection to this movie whatsoever. I don't care. I don't like the worlds. They don't feel very imaginative.
So do you think that's because there's no nostalgia tied in with you for those franchises, or because the game was bad, period?
The game was bad, period. So it's like there was no nostalgia factor. There were so many other worlds they could have picked that would have been better. And it was too easy. Like, that was one of the overall kind of complaints about it, was like, I didn't have to try. I think I got through that game with my eyes closed, never died once. Like, nothing was an issue. They had all these cool battle mechanics that you didn't really need to use at all. It was just very weird. It was just, the hype was too high, and there was nothing it could have done to have lived up to it.
All right, Matt.
Kind of torn between two things here.
You can say them both if you want. I have two.
Yeah, I mean, one, obviously, just I thought of because of the wait. Duke Nukem Forever.
Oh, ouch! Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that game was a hot pile of garbage.
Yep.
I didn't even pay for that game, and I didn't finish it. Yeah, it was oof. And like it wasn't, there were glimpses that at one point throughout the game, like from what I remember, there were some interesting ideas. You know, there was like a recycled thing from the original Shadow Warrior, where like you have to control an RC car and like push around objects to get the RC car to push something to you.
Okay.
But like controlling an RC car in real life, it gets really disorienting because like it's a fixed. You're looking at it from a fixed angle, and you have to adjust which way you're telling it. You know, and I'm like, that was kind of fun for a bit, but then it put me into a bullshit turret section. There are executions to get health back, just like glory kills, except they suck. They don't look good, and you take damage. They take too long. You take damage during them, so there's no real way to get your health back. It's like, the juice is not worth the squeeze.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a whole lot wrong. And then more recently, MechWarrior 5.
Oh yeah, spicy.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to hear this.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun with it for, I want to say, 20 hours. And then, like, the little things that I was overlooking just kept happening. It starts off real strong. It's just such a mixed bag. It starts off real strong. You're on foot. You're getting suited up. You walk out into the hangar, and you look up at your giant mech, and you're like, oh, yeah, let's do this. And then you get in the mech, and it's an okay training course. But then in the end, there's some kind of cutscene that's supposed to carry some emotional weight, and it just looks like hot garbage. They just zoom out. It looks like something from a PlayStation 2 or 3 era, like art direction style-wise. Like, just pull out on gameplay, and it's like, it's jarringly bad. It's definitely the worst the game looks the entire time I played it. And then when you get into the procedurally generated missions, like, I get that they have to spawn in enemies, but there's no rhyme or reason to direction and distance that enemies spawn in. And it's so lazy too, because occasionally they do come down in drop ships. So if you're going to spawn an enemy behind me, just have a drop ship fly in and drop those enemies behind me. Don't have them just appear behind me. It's an open fucking field. I know they just popped in. There's literally nothing they could have been hiding behind. And, you're telling me I have to go north and destroy this base, but every time I point myself there and take a few steps, I'm getting shot at from the south. Why are there enemies there? Like, put the enemies in my path so I have to fight through them to my objective and can leave. It's just a hassle. Now, I have been on playing it solo, so maybe the whole thing can be played co-op. Maybe this kind of thing with friends is great. Someone's like, I got the rear, and someone's like, I'm going to check this side, and you all move as a squad, and you just take them out as you move. But the AI is not smart enough to coordinate like that, so, just fix it. Fix it.
Right. Speaking of fixing it, I have two games, both that were, I don't want to say, I guess you would say disappointing at release, but were fixed in time after about a year or a year and a half. So number one is No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky is a game that I was super pumped about when it was announced and leading up to the release. I'm a big fan of science fiction and those kinds of visuals and environments. So the thought of a game where you could essentially have your own spaceship and just go planet to planet in a procedurally generated universe sounded very appealing to me, and build stuff or have a base or whatever. And I guess they got a lot of pressure from Sony to push the game out early, and what released was just an unfinished game. You could play it again for like 10 to 20 hours. It was very dry, and then there wasn't really much to do. It was empty, essentially. They had enough of a game to sell it to people, and that was it. It's kind of like a Fallout 76 situation.
A husk.
A husk. But thankfully, it's Hello Games, I think. Yeah, Hello Games stuck to their guns. It took them about a year and a bit, but they put out a whole bunch of updates. I think the main one was called No Man's Sky Next, and really just overhauled and revamped the game and added tons of stuff. And that's when I jumped back in, and I put like 150 hours of game time in after that. So No Man's Sky, if you haven't played it because it sucked when it came out, I highly recommend you pick it up. And number two is Diablo 3. I am a big Diablo fan, and that's an understatement. So I was very excited for Diablo 3. I watched everything that Blizzard put out leading up to launch for like 2 years, all the class reveals, all the videos, everything like that. I bought the books. So Diablo 3 came out. I bought it. I made Matt buy it. We played it in his living room at the time with one of his roommates. We ground out levels, and I got to the end of the game pretty quickly. And it was enjoyable. It was fun. The main game kind of stayed the same. But like No Man's Sky, once you were done, you were done. That was it. The game was broken after that point. What makes Diablo really exciting is loot, right? It was one of the first dungeon crawling, get loot all the time. That's kind of the whole point of the game style games. And the point of it is getting your character to max level and finding all this epic gear, and there was just none of it. That's because Blizzard's decided to put in a real money auction house. So essentially, people that did find good stuff could put it in the auction house that you could buy for real currency. So not only was there not a lot of loot dropping in the game that you could grind, but because you could buy it for like $1 or $2, it made grinding completely useless. There was no point. And it essentially just broke the entire game. Now, again, Diablo, like No Man's Sky, they realized their errors. They took that completely out. They fired their director. I think his name was Jay Wilson. And they came out with the Reaper of Souls expansion, which completely overhauled the loot system, all of the spells, all of the talents, no more auction houses, real money or otherwise, added a whole new act, which was fantastic. And from that point on, again, I put a ton of time into Diablo. So yeah, started shitty, turned out really great.
When I bought Diablo 3, I started with Reaper of Souls, so I didn't play any of that, of those issues before.
That was the one they let to console players. They let you guys have that. after the PC players fucking took the brunt.
You got the revised second draft.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, it's time for stay a while and listen. Got some spicy news this week. There was a PS5 launch event finally announced. People have been chomping at the bit for this for like months, I would say, at this point. And we all got to watch a Last of Us State of Play where we saw some really cool gameplay from The Last of Us Part 2. So we're going to talk about both those things and start with The Last of Us. So you guys both watched that demo, yeah?
I watched most of it. I skimmed it a bit.
Sam, why don't you tell me what you think?
So going into it, I hadn't really known much about it. Not playing the first one, I haven't really been following a lot of it. So this was kind of my first look at the game. Actually, very fresh eyes first look at the game. I was very impressed. So I'd mentioned when we watched the State of Play, that really all I was looking for was a reason to drop $100 on it when it comes out and buy it. And it was very smooth. The action looked great. Everything about it just looked very immersive. The water looked good, the trees looked good, the environments looked amazing. And I know you'll probably want to talk about the fights, so I'll save that for you. But yeah, it looked really cool. It looked really good. I'm excited for it. I was not interested before, but now I am.
Matt, what did you think as a, not a big fan of the first one?
Yeah, I have to admit, once the dude presenting it shut up and stopped trying to sell me on it, I found myself really enjoying it. That guy pissed me off.
So, the gameplay demo that we're talking about didn't start until Neil Druckmann stopped talking. So
I enjoyed that part a lot more. It actually looked like significantly more like a game. It had all the old crafting things, but like the open worldness and some of the stuff he showed up was fine. I just really there's one point in particular when she lies down in the grass and he's like, and due to our analog stealth system, if they get too close, they can see you. And I'm like, what the fuck? You mean like as opposed to they can see you or they can't? That's what a digital stealth system would be. You're either invisible or visible. You have degrees of visibility. Great. You've hit the high mark of what Metal Gear Solid 3 did on the PS2. Congratulations. You can become slightly less visible. Why are you saying analog stealth system? Like, don't try and sell me on big words. You're just saying there are degrees of visibility. And then when you like throw a rope and climb over, and it's like, and you can use this to traverse different ways, sometimes avoiding encounters. Climbing on a roof to go over them? Come on! Like, stop trying to sell me on these very old ideas. Show me the beautiful gameplay, your brutal, like, animations, all the little, like, multiple paths you can take. The game sells itself. Your buzzwords are killing me here. So eventually, I skipped that to when the gameplay started. Then I started having a good time. And I'm like, I might actually play this. This looks pretty cool. The only other thing, and this isn't my point, this was actually a Reddit commenter, because that's where I found the thing. It's a little weird that they're focusing on brutality and hatred, but then you get forced into these cutscenes where you have no choice, right? Like when she sneaks up on the person playing the PSP and stabs her in the throat. It's kind of weird to make a kind of, because I feel like this game has like an anti-violence message baked into it. Like, look how terrible this is. But
I don't think so at all. This game has a fucking be as violent as possible message baked into it.
I feel like
it's the same gameplay demo I did.
I mean, like, that's it. But I feel like
is violent.
I mean, it's going to be a violent game, but it's like, like how Metal Gear is a military game, like is ostensibly a war game that's an anti-war game. You know what I mean? Like Spec Ops: The Line, very brutal, but the message and the gameplay are like countered to each other. But someone pointed out that it was kind of weird that you have to be violent. You don't get a choice. It happens in a cutscene. But like they're trying to be like, they pointed out how all the enemies actually call to each other by names, like they're people. You grab one of them, their guard nearby doesn't go, hey, you, or whatever. They call out in concern for the person you just grabbed by name.
Yep.
And then when you kill them, you're killing a person. And to sort of have that kind of like grounded, like sort of anti-violent message, but then force you to be violent is kind of weird. Whereas in other games, they usually give you like, but there is a stealth option. I don't know. I'm done.
I'm curious why you think it has an anti-violent message.
Well, when you're showing brutal violence and people suffering, your reaction to that is, this is awful. This shouldn't be happening. Right?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I gather from what we've been shown, it seems the story is about revenge. Something bad happens to Ellie or someone that Ellie loves,
Mm-hmm.
and she's hell bent on revenge, and that's why she's fucking Ramboing all of these people.
Yeah.
So I guess as the player, we're supposed to be like, ooh, like I don't know about this, but like personally, I like the idea of Ellie running around with a fucking hatchet and chopping people in the chest, and I like that person's name is Billy, and someone cares about Billy, and I'm fucking him up because they killed my goddamn girlfriend. You know what I mean? If I'm talking about immersion in a game.
I guess, but I mean, like, I feel like there's going to be a point where she's going to come across someone and she's not going to know they're part of that thing, and they're going to bond, and suddenly they're going to start talking about someone she killed and how torn up they are, and she's going to realize she's become everything she hated, and that's going to be the anti-violent, it's like one of those, like,
oh yeah,
eye for an eye makes the whole world blind type things. Like, I feel like that's what I mean. That you're going to go and there's going to be a revenge thing, but there's going to be like this moment where, I mean, that's the typical arc, right? You go off, you do all the things. Like, these people who did the bad thing that you're, going to avenge are also people who've had bad things happen to them that drove them to this point. Why can't we all get along? Yada, yada, yada. That kind of shit. So,
yeah, I mean, ultimately, we really don't know where they're going to go with the story or what kind of revelations Ellie's going to have or what Joel's going to have to do with it or anything like that. I guarantee you, we've only seen a very small part of the game and small part of what the actual story is going to be. It's supposed to be Naughty Dog's longest game ever and their biggest game ever, so I'm sure there's going to be tons of shit. And you know what? I was going to get to Uncharted 4 as a point to your stealth comment, but also speaking to Uncharted 4, they like to throw you for loops. That's Naughty Dog's thing, right?
mm-hmm.
At the end of Uncharted 4, when Sam's actually working for the bad guy, there's going to be a moment like that in The Last of Us 2 for sure.
And actually, I'm going to counter one of my own points, because I brought up Spec Ops: The Line, which was a very effective narrative, where, you are forced at one point to do the bad thing. Like the white phosphorus scene. There's no getting past that point in the game without burning all those women and children to death. You have to do it.
Yeah, they love doing that.
So your guy can have a breakdown. Yeah.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, perfect example. The airport scene where you're gunning down civilians.
Yeah.
You're mass murdering.
Well, I mean,
Call of Duty,
right? Call of Duty, we know what to expect. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Call of Duty is like more linear and not as cerebral.
Okay, so talking to your point about the stealth, I think really what they meant to get across was that, considering this is Naughty Dog, is that in the first Last of Us and in Uncharted 4 and every other fucking Uncharted, if you go in the tall grass, the enemy's not going to see you, period. They can be right beside you. I think he's just trying to get across that as Ellie, you're not going to be able to get away with that. Yes, you can use the grass as a cover system, but it's not foolproof. It's not going to feel like a video game, I guess. It's going to be smarter than that. One of the things they're touting for this game is the level of the AI. So the AI being able to see through you in what might be stealth and what might not be. That's how they're going to react. And one more thing before I just talk about what I actually liked about the demo is that you were talking about when Ellie stabs the girl in the neck. She's playing the Vita.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hotline Miami on the Vita.
Yeah.
Awesome they put that in there, first of all. But you kept using the word cutscene, and I think what really got me excited about this game initially when I saw it at E3 was that there was a lot of cutscene-like events that happened in that demo that apparently are not cutscenes. It looks like they've made a way to work the gameplay so that it's smooth enough where you can have these interactions with NPCs or enemies or whatever that would look like you're in a QuickTime event, but you're still hitting button prompts. A good example is when Ellie has that little hand-to-hand combat section with the guy, and she's like dodging and ducking him.
Mhm.
That looks kind of like a QuickTime event, but I guarantee you somebody's hitting the circle button on the controller, and it's just because their AI is so good and the animations are so good that it looks fluid and it looks real. That's what gets me, personally, what gets me excited about The Last of Us.
Yeah, I'm still 90% certain that Vita bit was a cutscene.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
So positives for me, the animations, like I was just talking about, super smooth and realistic looking. I like that you can see all of Ellie's weapons on her kit, on her backpack. So she picks up a big stick at one point, and then she stops and she wraps the spikes around it, puts it back on her backpack. Now it has the spikes. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't clip in or anything. It's just she puts it right in there, nice and smooth. You can see her bow. You can see her rifle. They're attached. When she stabs somebody with her knife, she wipes it in her jeans and she puts it in her back pocket. It's a great animation. I love the attention to detail for that stuff. When she's swimming through the water, you can hear that she's labored, that treading water with a backpack full of shit is hard. And it doesn't look like she's just cruising through the water like Nathan Drake. Like, she's having a hard time holding herself up. And that's really immersive too. And then lastly, before we move on, personally, I found this sound design like top notch, man. The sound of the bolt being worked on the bolt action rifle, or her bow, or the way people reacted when she shot them with her bow. The sound of the silencer on the pistol.
Yeah, actually,
Amazing.
I did like that.
Amazing.
The improvised plastic
Yeah.
bottle silencer, and it's specifically like kind of that first shot. It sounded like a plastic bottle bursting. I was
For
like,
sure.
okay, I like that.
It sounds great, and I think that's just all going to help towards the overall immersion of the game. And I've heard a lot of people complain about the color palette too, that it's kind of like gray or it doesn't look next gen or whatever. And first of all, this game's going to be it's a PS4 game and it's not a next gen game.
Mm-hmm.
But comparing it to something like God of War, let's say, which is very fantasy based and magical, and there's lots of bright colors, and you go to the Bifrost and everything's crackling in energy and greens and purples and pinks. This takes place in a post-apocalyptic, broken down, gray, shitty world. So I think I'm okay with the color palette being like that, as long as things look crisp and good, whether it's your horse or the water or a building or whatever,
Yep.
I think that's it for The Last of Us, unless you guys had something else you wanted to add.
I don't know. I'm thinking I might actually go play the first Last of Us and actually finally finish it.
Maybe just watch the cutscenes on YouTube.
Nah, I don't know.
Up to you. Sam, anything else?
Nope, that pretty much covers it.
Are you going to buy The Last of Us Part 2, Sam?
I probably will. Yep.
Okay. Moving on. So finally, Sony announced officially the PS5 launch event. And we've been waiting for this. Like, I was pining for this like last October or November. Right? I've been waiting for it for months. We found out it's next Thursday. It makes sense, I guess, that they got Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us 2, which are their last two big first-party games out of the way with those states of play that we just watched, and now it's going to be all next-gen stuff. Are you guys pumped for that?
So excited. So excited.
Matt?
I'm not sure if excited... I'm looking forward to it. I'm not sure if excited is the right word. Excited is
I'm
like
excited.
Christmas is around the corner. I can't say... This is more like good news is around the corner.
Yeah.
But like it's going to be a while till it gets here. So I'm like... Not exactly excited, but I'm like... I'm eagerly anticipating? I don't know.
Basically, this gives me those like E3 vibes that I've been dying for that nothing has given me so far. The
Mhm.
thought of some of these games that are going to be announced that I'm sure inevitably will be gets me pumped, man. Like, I can't wait to jump out of my seat when I see something like one of my favorite franchises. So I have a list of rumored games essentially for the launch event and things people think we're going to see on the PS5. It seems to be the lists that are swirling around are mainly consisted of the same games. So we're going to go through them, a bunch of them. And I want you guys to tell me if you think we're going to see it. And if we were to see it, what would you want from that, whether it's a sequel or a new installment or reboot or whatever, okay? So the first one is Resident Evil 8.
No, we're not seeing it.
Sam?
I wouldn't be surprised if we do. Not having followed a lot of the Resident Evil stuff, there always seems to be something about it going on, like whether
lots
it's a
in the
remake
works,
or
man.
a new game, or like there's always. It's one of those ones where like people are like, oh, the new Resident Evil, and I'm like, what? There's always a new something coming out with this one, so I wouldn't be surprised.
So unlike let's say like a Bloodborne 2, this game is confirmed in development. It's being made. We know that. So that's why I'm going to go with, I think we're going to see Resident Evil 8 at this press conference. That being said, you guys are big Resident Evil fans. Sam more recently, whereas me and Matt have been playing it for a long time. What do you guys want out of Resident Evil 8? What are you hoping for? The rumor is first person for this one. But other than that?
It's also rumored to get a little bit more kind of traditionally horror.
Spooky.
You know?
Yeah.
Like spooky, and like I believe I heard the term werewolf tossed around at one point.
I've also seen werewolf.
So I just want to be pleasantly surprised. I want to be surprised first and foremost. Mm-hmm. You know, like this is going to go in a bit of a different direction, and that's cool. And I just want to walk away from it and not be like, wow, that was a mistake. You know, like if it's all like, bleh, and there's like a Dracula and a there's a Dracula and a wolf man and a Valmart making scars on little Harry Potter.
So the rumors
Brad Neely
are
reference
like werewolves, witches, madness mechanics, like snowy villages at night. That's all the stuff that I've heard.
Yeah, so like I just want them to pull that off and not go like, so this is Resident Evil now, huh?
I think Capcom's been knocking it out of the park, and I don't think there's any reason to doubt them. That considering how good 7 was, and it was first person, and how fucking scary that game is, I have no reason to doubt that this is going to be probably equally as good.
Yeah, I just don't want to have to mash a button to run away from a giant statue of a little Napoleon chasing me through a castle like in 4.
That's a whole other conversation. Sam, what are you hoping to see? Because the last couple of Resident Evil games that you've played are third person and remakes. So what do you want out of a new title?
Out of a new title, I actually really like the more, I don't know if it's like fantasy angle, but like if it's werewolves and stuff, I'm down for that. I generally don't enjoy games or movies or TV shows that take place in like a somewhat everyday city where like one or two things have just gone wrong. Like I don't love Call of Duty. I like zombies, but like zombies in a more fantasy area would be kind of cool. So if it's more of like witchy, snowy towns, things like that, I would be super down for that. First person versus third person, I don't really have much of a preference. Yeah, that's it.
Sam, have you played Resident Evil 7?
I have played it with her. Yeah.
Okay. Small bit.
I made her play the really scary part at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once it essentially turns into Resident Evil, that's where we stopped.
Oh, okay.
She played the survival horror game at the beginning.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next on the list is Horizon Zero Dawn 2. This seems to be a lock. Do you guys think we're going to see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really should play the first one.
I would say at this point, don't bother. Just wait for the second one. It's
going
to be a better version.
It's coming out on PC soon.
That's true. You're right.
Yeah.
Good point.
I enjoyed the story a lot more than I thought I was going to for the first one. So I would even recommend just playing it for the story. I think I actually cried at one point, or like was a little bit overwhelmed with not thinking that it was going in that direction, the direction that it did.
Yeah.
And I think it's been out for long enough that we're due for a sequel.
For sure, and it's been like leaked in like European gaming magazines and stuff. So I think this one's a pretty good lock. Personally, for the story, I'm not going to spoil it for you, Matt, but you have like almost two narratives going on in Horizon Zero Dawn. There's like a tribal warfare vibe, and then on top of that, the bigger arc is like a post-apocalyptic, distant future Robo Dino thing. Yeah, which is very compelling actually. Once you figure out what's happened and what's going on.
I watched you play a certain amount of the first one. I think pretty close to the beginning of the game. You were still like learning stuff, but like there were definitely some hints at that.
I just got my 4K screen. I wanted to see how good it looked. I think.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So. I'm sure the story will be just as good. I'm not sure where they're going to go with it.
Yeah.
Or if, Aloy will be the protagonist still. But I'm hoping gameplay-wise, we see a lot more interaction with the dinos, a lot more ways to like manipulate them and use them to your advantage. And I really hope they fix the faces, because Horizon is a beautiful game. Like the environments and the vistas are stunning. And like Aloy's character model looks really good, and the mechanical dinosaurs look really good and very original, which is super hard to do in video games nowadays. But when you have those like face-to-face Mass Effect, Assassin's Creed kind of conversations, it's rough and it doesn't look good. So, if you can make faces look like they do in Resident Evil 3 and 2 with the RE engine, you can do it for Horizon Zero Dawn 2, please. And that's all I have to say about
Fix the face.
Do you think at this point, games that come out that have like issues of faces like that, like what? Is it just budget? Is it just being lazy? Is it just not thinking that like it's going to be a big thing? Because it always is. And like, what it looks like before you put it out.
I think it's animation.
I think it's inexcusable at this point.
I think it's animation. Based on when I went back and played a very, very dated looking game, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Like that game is super dated, but some of the characters have actually really good facial animation, and like they don't look like a face until they start talking and moving, and then all of a sudden, like the guy voiced by John DiMaggio, the Bender, who gives you the tutorial, basically like homeless vampire Bender. Not exactly the most high-res or, like, graphically advanced face, but when he starts talking and, like, when you say things and he reacts and his eyebrows move and, the voice acting and that all comes together, it starts to work a little better. So I think, like, if they have the graphics to make the face and it just doesn't look good, it's gotta be an animation thing, like an Uncanny Valley sort of thing. The voice acting and the animation are just not matching up, because I've seen some really crude faces look really lifelike with good animation.
I think it's probably a little bit talent on the animation team. I think it's a little bit budget sometimes. I think it's a little bit games being pushed out too early. I think it could be any number of things as to why we have that. I just hope for Horizon they pay more attention to it other than the main character. That's all. Next, God of War Ragnarok. That's just a rumored title, by the way. It's not officially called Ragnarok.
Yeah, that should be the third, really.
Okay, so did I dream that or not?
No, that's a real thing. People are calling it Ragnarok.
Okay, then I saw that online. All right.
I'm assuming just that's because that's where God of War ended, with him incurring Ragnarok.
Yeah, that seems to be the title that anything's given that's Viking related, because Assassin's Creed was called Assassin's Creed Ragnarok forever until they gave it Valhalla.
So I think my real question for you guys isn't are we going to see it, but do you think it's too early to see God of War 2? It came out 2 years ago.
I don't know if we're going to see anything. They may announce it. Like, this is coming, but we don't have anything to show you yet.
Maybe some concept art.
I don't think Sony's going to do that. I think that would look horrible and people would eat them alive. Especially, and they did this to themselves, is that when they showed God of War originally, the first thing we saw was an extended gameplay trailer. We didn't see CG anything. We didn't see just a God of War logo or hear Kratos' voice. We watched Cory Barlog play the game live on stage for 15 fucking minutes. I just watched that press conference, So they set a precedent, and I don't think they're going to go back on it.
The one thing that's different this time, though, is like God of War was kind of like a beaten horse at that point. Like God of War, it had been around for a while. They'd made a few. They'd made some like portable versions of it. They made one that had a multiplayer that was like a prequel or something that didn't do too hot. So to be like, hey, by the way, we're making a new God of War. It's gonna be in a different place. He's gonna have a different weapon. We're gonna mix so much. It was such a surprise that they kind of had to come out and be like, hey, look how good it is. Like, because if they just walked out and like, oh, yeah, we're gonna kind of reboot God of War. He's gonna have a kid now, and it's gonna be Viking stuff. People would be like, that sounds terrible. The Blades of Chaos aren't going to fit in. Oh, he doesn't have the Blades of Chaos anymore. He's got an axe and a shield. And people would be like, what the fuck? And it would just be negative press the whole way. They kind of had to come out and be like, we're doing it all different, but it doesn't suck. Look. And like, show that.
Fair.
Now we know they can make a good God of War game, so I feel like they can come out and be like, we're working on it. Here's some concept art. Remember how good the last one is? Hang in there. And people will be like, all right. So who knows?
What do you guys want out of God of War 2? How do they build on what they did with 1? How do they make it better? An already amazing game.
Honestly, I'd be happy if they just give me a new part of the world with maybe slightly overlaps with something I've seen last game for that little bit of familiarity, and more Bifrost stuff. More, let me go to all the realms. Just give me all of them. And honestly, with the depth of the combat system, one more weapon, just one, that'll do. 2 is bonus. Just give me the 2 from the last game and a new one. Maybe some new moves.
I'd be fine with just more, like just the next part of the story. I'm not someone who requires a lot of ingenuity and changes in between games. Like, I stick with franchises because I like them. I'm like, I like this game, I want more of this game. So I would be fine with continuing with the Leviathan axe for another game. Like, you had the Blades of Chaos for what, 7 games across all the different platforms. I can do one more with the blade. So yeah, I would just be good with the next part of the story. Like, I didn't have any issues that I can think of from the last one at all.
Really, what I want with God of War is just more God of War. I just want a continuation of the story. I want to find out what happens, what the consequences of his actions were. I want to find out who blew the fucking horn when Atreus was sick. And I know people think it's going to happen, but I really hope we don't just end up going back to the same Bifrost and going to the ones that we couldn't go to before. That feels deals like, don't go back there. Go somewhere else, please. Next game, this is a fun one because it's fairly new news to me, but Lord of the Rings Gollum. Have you guys heard of this?
No.
I think I saw something about it, but I wasn't certain if it was a joke or not.
So someone's making a third-person action game with Gollum from Lord of the Rings as the protagonist.
Like,
and
Gollum the whole way, not Smeagol.
Gollum, I guess, variations of Gollum and Smeagol. You know, he's always one or the other. But so whoever was making this, and I apologize for not looking up the developer, put out a screenshot of Gollum, essentially rendered, and the internet kind of had like a Sonic the Hedgehog moment where they were like, "Oof, please, that looks like shit. Don't
Why did you render his dick?
Kill it, yeah, kill it. Make it new, please." But I haven't seen any gameplay or anything. But I keep seeing this game popping up on everyone's list for the PS5 event, so I thought I'd put it in there because it's not one of the usual ones that we talk about.
What would you do?
So that's my question: is how would you guys have a Gollum game? What would you do with it?
Forgive the sound of my keyboard. I have to.
I don't know. Like, I mean, it.
Oh, Jesus!
Yeah, I know. It's pretty much everyone else's.
I love it.
Oh, now I want to look it up.
Oh, I love it. Honestly, I think this is great. Like, with Sonic, I get people being like,
"Oh my god!"
With Sonic, I get why people are like this, but like when you consider when you consider what Gollum is, I mean, like, as if people are like, no, he's too hideous. Oh boy. Oh, can we make
exactly
that
as it's being presented?
Can we put that on the thumbnail for this podcast?
Yes. Yes.
All right. We really have nothing to go on with Gollum. So
no, I mean, like, we'll check back in on that. I'm kind of wondering what the gameplay is. Is it all you just sneaking up? Is it like Kill It With Fire, where you kill spiders, but you just eat them instead? You're just sneaking around rocks eating bugs?
It's you sitting in a dark cave for 20 hours, just talking to yourself.
Can you imagine? So the next one is Silent Hill Reboot or Silent Hill 10. We don't know if they're doing a full reboot or just the next one in the series.
And who is doing it? Konami still owns the rights, but they don't seem really like they're making games at all anymore that don't involve putting little metal balls in places.
You can pretty much guarantee Konami is not making this game, even though they still might own the IP. Someone else is doing it, and it's going to be a Sony exclusive, apparently.
I'm hoping it's like more of a kind of like I would love to see the original Silent Hill remade, remastered, what have you. You know, it's one of those things where I'm not saying keep the dialogue like with Metal Gear, you know. PS1 voice acting for the most part, with few exceptions. No,
not very good.
No, but I would like to see that original like Harry Mason and Cheryl story. Sherry?
Cheryl.
Sherry?
It's Cheryl.
And Sybil Bennett and Dr. Kaufman and all those great characters back. I loved the first Silent Hill. In a way, I almost like it more than Silent Hill 2, which is objectively the better game from like all angles. But the first Silent Hill is just so spooky.
It's good. 1 and 2 are both spooky.
3's good too.
Sam, do you have any experience with Silent Hill?
No. There's a lot of these like franchises right now that are being either remade or remastered that I'm really getting to experience for the first time, which is kind of cool. So I guess for me it would be a reboot. I would enjoy a reboot with these ones, getting to see them more or less totally reimagined, because I think a lot of these ones, like the remaster value comes from having played it before and like having a love for it and getting to see it updated. But for me, I'm like, I don't know what it looked like before. I don't know what the story was before. So I would be okay with a new reboot and just start fresh as a new. I mean, I saw the movie. I love the movie.
That's honestly enough to go on for going into it. The next one, I'm honestly not even going to entertain a conversation because we've talked about it like to death at this point. But Bloodborne 2 is on everybody's list. I think just because everyone wants Bloodborne 2 so much. There's like zero information that it's actually in development. I haven't seen anything ever. So if we do see it, it's one of my favorite games. Hopefully it's there, but I have no reason to believe that it's going to be nothing concrete.
Yeah, I did a little digging on that, or attempted to, and basically it's not Miyazaki's decision. He loves it. He really loved Bloodborne. It's kind of one of his favorite works, but he has absolutely zero say in when or if a Bloodborne 2 gets made. So,
yep. Okay, and lastly on the list, Gran Turismo.
Oh,
we're gonna see a new Gran Turismo game.
You know what? That's actually it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a while.
Gran Turismo Sport was the last one, and I feel like that was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
PlayStation kind of has a thing with launching with Gran Turismo games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Gran Turismo is probably, like, I hear a lot more about Forza these days, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like Gran Turismo's kind of on the back foot and probably wants to make a big, like, oomph, you know? Mm-hmm. Hey, remember us? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
So as a Gran Turismo fan, or at least I haven't been for a while, but I was when I was growing up, What I really hope we see, because the last one was Gran Turismo Sport, and it still wasn't like a fully fledged sequel for the game. It was kind of something different. So I think 7 is the next one in the series. So I really hope we see Gran Turismo 7 that is akin to the earlier games. Whereas, you have your massive car library,
Yeah.
tons of tracks, you can really tweak and tune your car. So less of like a esports thing, more of a sim, I guess. Something I can really take my time with and enjoy.
Well put. Sim.
Yes. Okay. We're going to wrap up the news with a game from the Final Bossman that I like, that I think will kind of tie things up neatly. It's called Big Whoop or Little Whoop. So, Blizzard cancels BlizzCon 2020. Sam, Big Whoop or Little Whoop?
Big whoop. That's a massive convention. Like that's a big one to cancel. That's like canceling Fan Expo, which it has been canceled here.
Yeah.
Naturally, being in like it's usually the first weekend of September or the last weekend of August. I was surprised that they canceled it this early. Because you're saying BlizzCon's not till like November.
November, yeah, that's when it usually is.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it seems a little early to be canceling something that big, but I also don't feel like it's the wrong decision. I think inevitably they would have to cancel it anyways. They just seem to be canceling a lot earlier than other people have been canceling their conventions. But yeah, Big Whoop. That's a massive, massive convention.
Big Whoop. Matt, Pyramid Head added to Dead by Daylight. Big Whoop or Little Whoop?
It's a little whoop that could become part of a bigger whoop. It could be a supplementary whoop. So Dead by Daylight itself, great little game,
Yeah.
Grading Silent Hill and getting that, great for the game, great for Silent Hill. But if this is in fact like kind of a warming the gears of the marketing machine for a Silent Hill announcement coming up soon,
that's what people are thinking.
Then this little whoop is a part of a bigger whoop. But it on its own, little whoop. It's a whoop, but it's a little one.
Yep. Sam, Sony boss Jim Ryan says he'd rather developers focus on making games fully optimized for the PS5 rather than cross-platform titles like Xbox. Big whoop or little whoop?
Big whoop.
Continue.
That's a big whoop. I know there's a lot of features and stuff that get a lot of time put into them that we don't need. I would much rather quality games than the ability to have them like cross-platform. Just yeah,
Okay.
I would yeah.
Me personally, I'm not someone who cares about cross-platform anything. I could give a shit if they keep making PS4 games. I don't want to play my PS3 games on PS5. I want new, shiny games. Matt, Doom Eternal remains at 51% on Steam after patching out de novo, which it was review bombed initially for.
Oof.
Big whoop or little whoop?
This isn't even a whoop. This is a like oof, and it's a big oof. Like honestly, gamers are the reason gamers can't have nice things, and this proves
100%.
it. You know, the game was sitting at like 89, 90 something. They added something. People said, meh. They review bombed it down to like 50 something. They removed it. They said, we hear you. And people are still pissed off. It's just like, fuck off. You know, I would love to see one day. It obviously will never happen. But like, if I would totally be okay if it just released a patch, like a mandatory update for the game that bricks the game. So the game becomes unplayable, and they're like, you know what? You guys, you spoke, you hate the game. It's gone. No more Doom Eternal.
Yeah.
We got our money. You got to play it. It's done. You can't play it anymore. Like, it makes me so mad when people are like, we want to be heard. And then they're heard, and they get their thing, and they're still shitting all over the thing. Like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So big
Fuck
oof.
off. All right, it's time to wrap up our top 10 favorite games of all time. So over the last couple of weeks, all three of us have been listing off our favorite games. And we are now at number 2 and number 1, the finale. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you've listed off so far?
All right. Number 10, Payday 2. Number 9, Homeworld. Number 8, Minecraft. Number 7, Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. Number 6, Warcraft 2. Number 5, Soul Reaver, Legacy of Kain. Number 4, Company of Heroes. Number 3, Dark Souls.
I'll go next. So my number 10 was Super Mario World. Number 9, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Number 8, Doom 2. Number 7, Gran Turismo 3 Ace Spec. Number 6, Red Dead Redemption 2. Number 5, Resident Evil 4. Number 4, Bloodborne. Number 3, 2018's God of War. Sam?
Okay. Number 10 was Metroid Prime Corruption. Number 9, Mass Effect 2. Number 8 was Okami. Number 7 was Doom from 2016. Number 6 was Borderlands 2. Number 5, Assassin's Creed 2. Number 4, Diablo 3. And number 3 was God of War 4 as well.
All right, so we are all going to do our number 2s, and then we're all going to do our number 1s. So Sam, why don't you start today with your number 2 favorite game of all time?
All right. My top 1 and 2 were not what I was thinking they were going to be when I started. But my number 2 game of all time is Pokemon Silver.
All right. Great game.
Yep, amazing game. So I actually pulled up some information on them this time. So Pokemon Silver came out for Game Boy Color in like 1999, 2000, depending on where you were in the world. But one of the reasons I put it on this list was with all the next gen talk from jumping from like PS4 to PS5, it was one of the only games that I can remember where it felt like a next gen jump, going from Pokemon Red and Blue into what Silver and Gold were. So you go from Kanto to this new region of Johto. There's about 100 new Pokemon in it. It was at the point in time where the new Pokemon were still actually creative, and they weren't just like a garbage bag with a face that evolves into a bigger garbage bag with 2 faces. They actually still had really creative Pokemon. And some of like the new features that they had, there was a time system. So you had like a real-time internal clock, which went over the day of the week. There were different events on different days of the week. There were different Pokemon that you could only find at certain times of day, which was something that you didn't have in the old one. There were new battle mechanics, like holding items. You could hold berries, or you could hold like a piece of charcoal, which would make your fire Pokemon stronger. Little things like that. There were specialized Pokeballs. There was Pokegear, like a map, a watch, a radio. There was a phone, which I remember the first time I received a phone call in the game was the coolest thing in the world. I mean, like, I was, 11 or 12 at the time, so it was pretty cool. There were shiny Pokemon. There were 2 new Pokemon types. There was breeding. There were amazing starters as well, so the starters were still cool, whereas I found all the last couple iterations of Pokemon, like the new Pokemon had not been that great, the starters have not been that great, and I just played the shit out of that game. It looked so cool, the music was great, like as far as a Pokemon game can go on a Game Boy Color, but it was so fun, and it shows, like the last couple of games that have come out that are more next gen, I guess, like Pokemon Sun and Moon, things like that, they've been weird and they don't feel like Pokemon. So Pokemon Silver is my number 2 for sure.
Matt, what's your number 2?
All right, my number 2, Age of Empires 2. This was not my first or second RTS franchise, but it definitely became my favorite. Age of Empires 2, medieval period. I mean, I don't know if I have to explain the game, but you start with like a little village. You start with a few villagers and a house that gives you like a population cap of like 5, and you just go from there. You get your villagers chopping down trees and either hunting or getting berries so you can get more food, so you can get more villagers. You build more houses so you can build more units. You get some stuff, and then you get to that point where you age up. This was like my first experience. Civilization has a similar kind of thing, but it's like more gradual and less of a big step. But like when you go to your town center and you go from the feudal age to the, what is it? Can't remember the steps. But I know castle is the 3rd age and imperial is the 4th. I don't remember what the 2nd is. But then all of a sudden you can like farm and you can do all these other things. And most importantly, you can build stone walls. And me, like 13, 14-year-old me, had there was no greater pleasure than just building a giant wall around, I would look at the map, I would find every pocket of resources I thought was even remotely practical for me to mine, and I would wall off roughly half of the map and be like, this half is mine. And then put towers all along the walls, put 5 archers in each tower, and I would just comp stomp all day. And the AI would have so much trouble. I would just build these elaborate defenses and then just mine up everything, cut down all the trees, eat all the animals, pick all the berries, build giant farms, gold mines, stone mines, build markets so I could trade what resources I had too much of for the ones I didn't, and then just build a massive, massive army. Yeah, especially as the Vikings. That was really fun, because then you get their unique unit, the Berserkers, who regenerate health, and you build a shit ton of Berserkers, and you just run into one of their villages, burn everything down, slash everything, go back to your base, just wait for a few seconds, they regenerate their health, go back out again. It was a great turtling RTS. It's all the factions are, it had such a large tech tree that they managed to make all faction distinct not by adding unique units. Everyone would get 1 or 2 unique units, but it's what they didn't get. Vikings cannot get improved stone walls because they weren't known for their stonework. They can build a basic stone wall. They can't do that. The Huns can't build walls at all because they were just rampaging nomadic horsemen. They don't need houses. You have infinite pop cap. You don't need to build houses for them, but you also can't build walls. You're an on-the-move civilization. And just by taking certain technologies and adding or removing them, you get these very distinct factions and 30 of them. It's great music, great fun, accessible, good design. Just endless hours of fun. Age of Empires 2, one of the best RTSs ever made. And it's been both remastered and remade in the last few years. And it's quietly apparently having a great competitive year. Apparently it's pretty popular right now in the niche community that it exists in. And it came out a long time ago.
My number 2 game is World of Warcraft. So I have Matt to thank for introducing me to World of Warcraft. I believe we were probably still in high school, and he sat me down at his computer table at his parents' house and said, "Here, try this." I think his brother Ian was playing it initially and got Matt into it, even though he didn't play for very long. He got me to try it. So I made a human mage, I believe, was my first character. And the next couple hours that I stayed at Matt's house, I just sat there and played World of Warcraft. I had no idea what Matt was doing at the time. And I immediately went home and I bought it. I had never played a game outside of, let's say, Diablo, where you're in a fantasy world that felt so realized. It wasn't top down like Diablo, where you could just barely see your character. This was third person, and I could see my character model and all of their cool armor and these beautiful immersive environments, and to be able to cast spells real time and see my mage lift up his hands and conjure the fire and shoot them at the enemies, at the time blew my mind. And as someone who loves fantasy so much, I just ate that up, right? So I went home and I bought it, and of course, because Matt kind of just jumped me right into the game, I didn't realize that there was a whole other faction in World of Warcraft. I just made a guy. I didn't realize that I could play as cool fucking monsters. So my first real character in World of Warcraft was an undead warlock. This skeleton-like thing who can summon demons and pull the souls out of people with this cool purple beam. You start in a crypt in this dead forest, and like it doesn't get much cooler than that as far as fantasy goes. This game, besides the fact that I love it so much, is also hugely influential, and after it came out, became a staple for every other game like that, like Guild Wars. Like everyone tried to copy it. Like Warhammer made their own version of it. It's just a very important game. So besides that fact, also some of the best lore in video games. Now, my first Warcraft game ever was Warcraft 3, that talked about the story of the Burning Legion and their invasion into Azeroth, this fantasy world. And then the expansion, which was the Frozen Throne, where we saw Arthas become the legendary Lich King. And I love both of those stories. So for me, jumping into World of Warcraft, those things weren't even on my mind. And the writers of WoW at the time, I guess Chris Metzen was a big part of it, did something really great where they just kind of sprinkled little breadcrumbs throughout the story of World of Warcraft that, you remember the Burning Legion? They might be coming back. Something bad is happening. There's rumblings of this like ancient dark army or fear. It kind of sounds like Lord of the Rings, right? And they really did a good job of integrating that into the game. Now, I got the first game with about 3 months left into the second expansion, which covered the Burning Legion. So before I knew it, I was going through the very portal that the Burning Legion initially used to invade Azeroth, to fight the Burning Legions themselves and their leader, Illidan. And then, working through that expansion onto Wrath of the Lich King, where I got to fight Arthas. And these are characters that I've read countless books on, that I fell in love with. So it was really cool real time to be able to group up with friends and take these legendary bad guys on. I can't think of a game before that gave me that feeling. The work that I had to put into it to get it, and then like the feeling of triumph for downing a boss. That game made me feel it way before Dark Souls ever did. So another point touching on that is the social aspect of this game. I'd never played a game where I had so many friends that I would just log on and say like, hey, what's up guys? What's up? And there'd be like, I don't know, like 15 to 20 people on in my guild real time, just chatting, talking to each other, grouping up, doing raids. I remember logging on at Christmas time just to say Merry Christmas to my guild mates, because we would spend every Friday and Saturday night together for 6 to 7 hours grinding these raids so we could get to the final bosses, whether it was Illidan or Arthas or whoever. And then another awesome thing about World of Warcraft is just how massive it is. This game is fucking huge, and it isn't huge and empty. It's big and it's full of life. I remember just after the second expansion came out, or the first expansion, sorry, I had my cousin over. He's a couple years younger than me, and he was into video games as well, but not as much. So I wanted to show him how big it was. So I had made an orc at the time, and when you start as an orc, you're in this place called Duratan. So I took my orc, and I'm like, look, let me show you how big this map is. So I ran my orc from Orgrimmar, which is the main city in Duratan, to the other end of Duratan. It takes like 15 minutes real time to do that. Okay, just running. I didn't have a mount or anything. And he's like, oh, wow, pretty big. And I was like, yeah. So I opened the map, and I right-clicked, and I showed him the little tiny circle of Duratan on this giant continent. And I'm like, I can do that across this entire fucking map. And he's like, whoa, that's crazy. And I was like, oh, yeah? And then I right-clicked it again and showed him the other fucking continent on the other side of the ocean. And all of those zones are populated. They all have different monsters. They all have different scenery and vibes and weather. And I don't think I've played a game since that's been open world that's matched that. And lastly, because I realize I'm kind of dragging on here, I've played like a stupid amount of WoW, like over 1,000 hours. If a game can hold your interest that long, it's a damn good game. And that's my number 2. Sam, what is your number 1 game?
Oh, I've been saving this because I didn't want to talk about it earlier, but my number 1 game is the first Kingdom Hearts game.
Okay.
Hands down, and I didn't want to get too into it talking about Kingdom Hearts 3 earlier. So this game came out in 2002, and it is probably just one of the most enjoyable, fun times I've had playing games. It was still like I was young enough that games were still like just fun, and I wasn't always like trophy hunting or like just playing these like punishment games or playing online or multiplayer. It was just this fun experience where you got to go through so many cool things. So I touched a little bit on it earlier with the worlds that you get to go to. So in Kingdom Hearts, you get to travel to all these different worlds, and in the first one, by far the first one had the best worlds. There was Destiny Islands, where you start, which is just this small little island, essentially in the middle of nowhere. Like, it's you and maybe 5 other people that live on this island, and there's nothing else to the world. And you end up traveling to these other worlds that you didn't know exist. There's Traverse Town. When you get to Traverse Town, you meet a bunch of Final Fantasy characters, which is really cool. You go to Wonderland. You go to the Deep Jungle, which is like a Tarzan world. The Colosseum is amazing. There's just these battles that you go through. There's like all these different cups that you can win. You go to Agrabah. Halloween Town is the greatest one. Atlantica, you go to Neverland, Hollow Bastion, you go to all these different places. And the coolest thing that I'd never seen in any game before, and that outside of Kingdom Hearts I can't really think of any other games that do it, is your character would change to whatever world you were in. So when you land in Halloween Town, like, you step off your ship and you're in this like Jack Skellington cool little like pumpkin outfit, and your Keyblade, which is your main weapon of the game, changes as well. So you can get a different keychain in each world, and it changes the look of the Keyblade. And I remember that was one of the greatest things. Like, I've never cared about weapons in any other games other than that. Was like the design of my Keyblade was the coolest thing. You get to the Little Mermaid world. Like, Little Mermaid was one of my favorite movies, and you turn into a mermaid. Like, you get a little tail and you get to swim around in this world, and like Goofy's a turtle, and like it's absolutely amazing. It's so colorful, it's so bright. It's fun. It has these like dark tones that you never quite understand. Like, nobody knows what's going on in Kingdom Hearts. The people making Kingdom Hearts have no idea what's going on in Kingdom Hearts anymore. But it was still like, the plot was still at that point where it was the first game. It kind of made sense. You knew more or less what you were doing.
Heartless bad.
Heartless are bad. Except, are they? It was before there was Heartless and Nobodies and all these other stuff. But God, it was so fun. And it was the first video game that ever made me cry. I've cried in a couple of them. But I cried twice in that game. There was one part where you get to it's essentially the last world that you go to. It's Hollow Bastion, which has some of the greatest music. I listen to that music all the time still. And you've had everything stripped away. You're by yourself, so this Keyblade that you've been using the entire time, you end up just with this wooden sword, and you have to fight through the first half of the level with this wooden sword. And I remember like feeling the loss of losing my weapon. Like, it's like it takes the heart out of your character, and it was devastating. And I remember sitting there for a little bit crying, like with this little sword, and being like, oh my God, what have I done? And then I cried again at the end of the game when you end up, you're searching for your friend the entire game. You're searching your Sora, you're looking for Kairi. You finally find her at the end, and you get separated again. And it was just devastating. And I cried, and I watch that scene like every so often on YouTube, and I cry every single time. But yeah, Kingdom Hearts, the first game, is just, it's perfect. And I was thinking about it when we were talking about like smoothness of fight mechanics. for a game that is, I guess, 18 years old now, the fighting is flawless. Like, you can't really do combos. You can't really do a lot of things. You're essentially button mashing, more or less. You're choosing spells and stuff to use as well, kind of Final Fantasy-esque. But the fight scenes and the boss battles are amazing. The bosses are so cool. Each one is individual to whatever world you're in. So, like, for Halloween Town, you end up fighting Oogie Boogie at the end, which is great. But the fighting is flawless. Like, it is smooth as fuck. And, like, it, for a game that's 18 years old, it should not be that good. And it is. And that is Kingdom Hearts. It's the best.
All right. Matt, what is your number one favorite game of all time?
Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. That's fucking backwards. God damn it. Anyways, oh, and by the way, in this same pile of manuals, I wanted to point out, Chris, I have...
Oh, nice.
The World of Warcraft manual, which was a pretty beefy thing, really. They don't make manuals like that anymore.
Shout out to manuals. I miss big video game manuals.
Oh man, I got a Red Dead Redemption map here. By the way, that's why I disappeared during Sam's. I know for a fact I have Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, like the case nearby, because I have all my PS2 games, and I was like, if I find that, I can find the case for Metal Gear Solid 3. But no, Metal Gear Solid, it was a real toss-up between the first one and 3, because they're both excellent games. And you could argue that 1 was more important to me personally. Like, playing 1 was a bigger deal than playing 3. But 3 is by far the superior game in my mind. It just because you could play that game 20 times differently. You know? It was where, like, Kojima kind of, like, really let go of, like, restraint. And was just like, okay, you're going through the jungle. Maybe you can eat things in the jungle, you know, to keep your stamina up. Let's put 64 animals in the game. And let's make them act responsibly. And let's when you kill one, how about you call someone who will give you a whole bunch of facts on that animal. But there's not just animals, there's also plants and stuff. So let's put a whole bunch of fungus and vegetables in there and have that. And then let's have little jokes about that. Like at one point you can find a bioluminescent mushroom in caves. And they're glowing mushrooms. And when Snake calls in, it was just like, so do they recharge my batteries? And it's like, what? It just feels like if I ate something glowing, it would, like, recharge my batteries or something. And they're just like, what the hell is he talking about? Yeah, sure. When you eat the mushroom, it'll recharge your batteries. And then you do it, and it works. And you can call them back and be like, by the way, it worked. I ate those mushrooms, and they recharged my batteries. And they're like, what the fuck? That shouldn't have happened. Maybe it's a placebo effect? I don't know. Just, yeah, sure. Tell them that's what happened.
God bless Kojima.
Oh man, there's just so much great dialogue in that movie. It goes to a historical setting. It's like a Cold War thing. Big open environments. A lot of analog stealth. But no, they forgot. All Metal Gears up to this point had used a very, like, either hide behind something or be in plain vision. And this one gave you, like, you're basically playing dress up with Snake the whole time. Because you get a whole wide range of face paints and camouflages. And based on your surroundings, they will all have different effectiveness. So, like, if you want to be, like, really stealthy, you're crawling through the grass, and then you get to dirt, and you change your clothes, and you paint your face brown, and then you keep going. And, like, you're swapping these out all the time to make sure that you can't be seen. There's a tree bark one for if you want to, like, press up against a tree, you know? And, like, it's a percentage-based thing. There's a lot of room for mastery, a lot of room for exploration, a whole bunch of detail in every little thing. when you get the first pistol in the game, you can call your like weapons dude, and he will talk about this pistol for like 10 minutes. Every single part of it and why it's exceptional, the history of the thing. This detail extends to literally every item and thing in the game. When you get wounded, you have to perform surgery on yourself, and you have like, you don't just have like health packs. You have like a whole list of tools and medications that have to be taken. Like if you kill something and you eat it, like if you eat like a river snake raw, you might get parasites, and then you have to take these pills. Or if you get like shot, you might have to use like your knife to dig out the bullet, and then like styptic to stop the bleeding, and then some sutures to close the wound, and then some disinfectant to prevent it from getting infected. And like everything is just so detailed. The plot is ridiculous and awesome and still works. It walks this very fine line between being incredibly cheesy. There's a guy named The Pain. He controls bees from inside his body. And then sometimes he'll spit out bullet bees, he calls them, that like are like homing bees instead of just the usual thing. But you have smoke grenades, and bees don't like smoke, so you're like, you fight him in this like cave grotto where he's like standing, there's all these little like stone platforms, like little plateaus, and water. And you're kind of like popping out onto the stone, trying to take some shots at him. He'll send bees after you, use some smoke grenades to dissipate the bees. But then, like, maybe you run out of smoke grenades, so you dive in the water and try and stay under the water so the bee swarms can't get you. And there's a 100-plus-year-old sniper named The End, who's just this old dude who can kind of, like, pop his eye free and, like, rotate it in all these weird ways. And he's been lying in the ground so long that moss has symbiotically attached itself to him, and he can photosynthesize now. So he can just lie out in the sun, waiting for his target, without eating or drinking for days, because he's basically so old, he's literally vegetating. Like, and pure, like, Koji, he's so old, if you save your game in the boss fight with him, go into, at the time, your PlayStation 2, go into the clock settings, move it forward a few years, and reload your game, he'll have died of old age. I mean, theoretically, if you stuck on that boss and walked away for a year and then came back to resume it, he would have died waiting for you for that year. It has this whole idea that when you save and quit, everyone is like, Snake is sleeping, but the world is persisting. And so things can change. If you're wounded and you save the game and quit, you'll be healed when you load, because he's rested. Ridiculous characters, with ridiculous phrases. No one knows why the bad guy keeps going, Kuwabara, Kuwabara. He does. Yeah. He can control lightning, and then we'll put bullets in between his fingers like this, and punch things, and then uses electricity to set off the bullets, and send the bullets into whoever he's punching. They call him Thunderbolt. Colonel Volgin. But at the end, despite all this silliness and all this over-the-topness, it has one of the saddest gut punch endings ever. Essentially, everything you've been doing the entire game has been a lie. And the person who betrayed you, that you are sent to hunt down and kill, never did, and knew it, and chose to die to you out of a sense of duty, because of an attempt to infiltrate an enemy force gone so wrong that the only way to save face was to make it look like the betrayal was real, and to punish the betrayer, who was never actually trying to betray anyone, was just trying to infiltrate. And that person realizing that to clear their name would cause an international incident, so they choose to play that role and die to you. Like, they're your mentor, and they possibly ex-lover, possibly current lover. It's never really left up, but yeah. And then you get this all explained by someone you thought was helping you out the whole game, but actually was betraying you. So they steal everything that you worked for at the end of the game, leave you this thing by the way, you killed your best friend for no reason. And it ends with your character standing over their mentor's grave with flowers, saluting, and a single tear running down their face. And the music, it's so cheesy and so corny and so devastating at the end at the same time. Oh man, that theme.
Good song.
Yeah, but no, Metal Gear Solid 3 is just it is something that could only exist as a video game. Only through that level of interactivity will you actually care about something that zany, and only through hours of cutscenes can the finale have impact, but it hits so goddamn hard. I kind of want to play it right now, and it's not a short. You play about 50% of the game. Yeah. And the origins of a bunch of other Metal Gear characters, it just ties so much stuff together, especially after the ridiculous, convoluted plot of 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only other thing, a little attention to detail thing I can think of right now is at one point halfway through the game, you lose an eye. And from then on, whenever you aim your gun in first person, it kind of looks like that, except rounded.
Okay.
Your binocular vision is lost, and the side that lost the eye, there's a little bit of a black kind of cutoff thing, because you're only looking through one eye now. Yeah.
The more you talk about this game, the less I know about it, the more I want to play it.
Oh, it's fantastic. There's I think the remastered collection can be purchased digitally, but I don't know if it's on PS4.
I'm not sure. You can find out pretty quick, though.
Yeah.
You had me at bees and lightning bullets.
Oh, man. Oh, and I forgot about the Fear, who coats his... he can dislocate his arms in every joint and can climb up trees and he has poison bolts. And he looks like
Kojima likes his literal names, that's for sure.
The trick with him is being invisible is apparently a huge drain on the metabolism, and he has to eat all the time, so he's always scurrying around eating frogs and stuff during the battle to stay invisible. But what you can do is you can take some spoiled food, because if you kill an animal and hold it in your inventory too long, it rots. And then you can, or poison mushrooms, and if you throw those out, he'll just instinctively eat them, and then he'll vomit, and it won't refill him, and then he'll be all sluggish and visible. So if you can poison him, if you give him food poisoning, he's not so tough.
Okay, and last one. Can you guys guess what my favorite game of all time is? I think it's probably a pretty easy guess.
Actually, I don't know.
No?
Diablo? Yeah.
My
Diablo
favorite
2
game of all time is Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction. I'm not going to go on for a long time because this is already a super long podcast, which is totally fine.
And we do play it.
Yes. So I guess I'll get out of the way right away. One of the main reasons why I love Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction so much is I still play it to this day. I played this game for the first time when I think I was in grade 8, maybe grade 7. I was fairly young, and I played it 4 days ago. Me and Matt were streaming it, and I just for no reason started a sorceress and started power leveling her like I used to when I was a teenager, just mindlessly doing it. And one of the main attractions to Diablo 2 is this very it's very visceral. It's not like the story's great, the environments are great, but it's this. Can you guys hear this? Can you hear that?
Yep.
That's it. That's Diablo 2 right there. You're constantly clicking, you're constantly killing things. There's no stopping. As soon as you kill one enemy, there's another enemy, and there's another enemy, and there's another enemy, and it just keeps going, and it's so addictive because of that, and because of the sound design and the way your weapon looks when it kills the enemies, and the animations when they die are so good. It makes it very satisfying to kill these things, and you just don't want to stop. And it's an easy game to lose hours to, and I've lost hours to this game. I probably played it more than World of Warcraft, which is a little bit frightening, to be honest with you. All that aside, Diablo 2, I love the story. To start, characters like Andariel and Duriel and Mephisto and Diablo and Baal became like lodged in my brain. Like, it's up there with Lord of the Rings lore for me. You know, I have books on these guys. I have strategy guides. I have figurines. I have action figures. They're some of my most beloved characters that I've come across in any kind of media, and especially when I was a kid. Like, they were notorious, you know, like going down to the catacombs and fighting Andariel or fighting Duriel. You knew he was going to whoop your ass, and it was like a scary thing. The atmosphere of Diablo when I was younger, because it was so fresh and new, there wasn't a lot of games like it, or any game, especially like the first one. The environment was so grim and dark and spooky, and the soundtrack was so sinister. It really immersed you in the game and gave you this feeling like you were really fighting these primevals as an adventurer. And that speaks to Diablo 1 a lot. Diablo 2 is the same, but Diablo came forward with all this great itemization, all these great skills. That was one of its main strengths, is you can build the character so many different ways, with all kinds of different weapons that had all kinds of different suffixes and affixes, and gem slots and runes and rune words, and just like an endless amount of possibilities. And that's why it's so replayable, because you can build the character just like 100 different ways, and they'll still be viable and they'll still be fun to play with. You know, people are still coming up with builds to this day because there's so many different options. And you know, there was a ton of weapons, and they all look cool. And it was the first game where I really cared about what armor I was getting, and like, oh, look, I put the shoulders on my guy, and now I can see the shoulders on him, and they look even bigger than the last ones. And when I got the whole set of armor, it made my sorceress glow, like surrounded her by a glowy aura that made you feel like ultimately powerful, which was the whole point. That was for any set on any character. It gave you that like glow. You felt like a god. I remember the first time doing that. Felt amazing. And I guess, yeah, that's really it. Like, I love that game. I've built Dungeons and Dragons campaigns on it, on its story, on its lore, similar to it. I've read all the books. I've read all the comics. Yeah, Diablo 2. I don't want to go on forever. I think that's all I have to say about it. One more thing, actually. There are better games. On my list, even. God of War 2018 is a much better game than Diablo 2. Bloodborne is a much better game objectively, but to me, it just means a lot. So Diablo 2 is my number one. And I think since we're going so long anyway, I'd like to give us all, to round out the list, just like an honorable mention. So one game you guys didn't put on the list that you'd like to talk about before we wrap it up.
Oh, yeah. I got one. Command and Conquer.
All right.
Command and Conquer. It was a contender, but it didn't quite make the list, simply because it was the game that I saw before I got into RTS people playing, and I thought that looked super cool. I thought the sound was good. I thought the music was good. I thought it was really neat. But, like, even though I played a crap load of Command and Conquer and Red Alert, Warcraft, which did make the list, was like the first time I did a modem game with someone and played an RTS with a person. And Age of Empires 2, I just ended up playing way, way more of and just learned the systems of. But yeah, Command and Conquer gets an honorable mention, for sure.
Okay, Sam?
Trying to think. Actually, you know what? Another kind of super nostalgic old game that I put tons and tons of hours into was like this whole Spyro franchise.
Ooh.
I loved Spyro. Spyro was so much fun.
Spyro 2.
Yeah, Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage. I still have it, and it's holographic. But they were super fun. It was it was actually one of the first games. Actually, it was probably the first game that I 100% completed. It was before there were trophies, I believe. But I had completed everything in the game. And in the first one, they had this like little secret area where if you rescued all of the dragons and you 100% completed that, there was this door that would open up and you got to go to this little beach. And on the beach, there were these little mini games that you could play, and you could collect coins, and like you couldn't really do anything with them. But it was just this fun little like side area where you could just play these little mini games. And it didn't have to be in the game. I'd never seen anything like that before. But it was really fun. And I totally forgot I was gonna buy the remaster, and I'm gonna do that today.
I got it.
Okay. This game came to me when Matt was talking about Metal Gear Solid 3, and the one I'd like to mention is Death Stranding. Death Stranding came out last year, I think, right?
I mean, like, it came out 2019, but I don't think it's actually been out for a year. Maybe it has.
No. So it came out last year. I played a lot of games last year that were really good, and possibly better than Death Stranding, but nothing affected me like Death Stranding. No one makes games like Hideo Kojima. This game is fucking weird, man. It's all over the place. You know, there's characters. He likes his literal names like Hartman and Deathman and fucking, you know, Sam
Die Hardman.
Bridges. Yeah, Die Hardman. It's so unusual and it's so different. That's, to me, that somebody can make a game so unique in this time when a lot of the games are the same. It blows my mind. Like, when you're running out of energy and you're in the room, you're like your home space with Sam Porter Bridges, your main player, you can chug Monster energy drinks. Not Monster-like energy drinks. The brand, Monster energy drinks. Sam always has 5 of them on his table, and you can go over to them and press triangle, and he'll chug the whole thing like grossly, like he's chugging a beer. He'll slam it into the garbage can, he'll burp, but then he'll have more energy. And then you can use his pee to make bombs to fight these BTs, the beach things, these like black goo monsters who come from essentially the place you go that is between life and death. So just weird things like that. You carry a baby around on your chest that will periodically cry if you're walking around too roughly, and you need to detach him and rock him to soothe him so he'll stop crying, because if he keeps crying, the beach things will drag you into the earth and like into death realm, essentially. And to rock the baby, you have to rock the controller, and the crying sound comes out of the fucking controller. It's a super weird game. You have that stuff, but then at its very core, you're this lonely man whose job it is to connect the country. So you have your packages, you get your job, and you go from point A to point B. That's all it's really about. And I've never felt, as someone who's very introverted, I've never felt so at peace and cathartic while playing a game as just being Sam Porter Bridges and walking with my packages. You know, and occasionally a nice song will come on, and you have these beautiful vistas of like mountains in the distance. It takes like a half an hour real time to get from point A to point B, and you get things to help you. Eventually you get motorcycles and a truck and like robot legs and stuff. But it's still the same purpose. You have to get your packages to the people that want them. And it's just a very soothing, relaxing process getting them there. So on top of all the weird stuff, yeah, it's just, it's like building Legos. You can just zone out and kind of do it. And I highly recommend, if you are a fan of Kojima, you have to play this game. It is unique.
I will.
It is different, and it was a really cool experience I'll never forget in video games, that's for sure. All right, it's time for bets. So, Next week, the PS5 launch event is happening. How many exclusive games will we see? Sony exclusives. Sam.
3.
Matt.
I actually changed my bet over the course of this podcast.
Okay.
I turned it into a piece of pizza that is smiling. I am going with 2.
2, and my bet is, it was 5. It is now 4.
Ah.
All right, we got to settle up.
So
last week, what?
You want to know why I changed my bet?
Why?
Remember when we were talking about Horizon, and then I was like, it's coming to PC?
Yeah.
Just realized Horizon is no longer an exclusive franchise. Neither is Death Stranding, also coming to PC.
Yeah.
So I just realized a bunch of Sony exclusives are no longer actually Sony exclusives. If we see Horizon 2, it won't be an exclusive because that franchise is on PC now.
I mean, Horizon 2 will be an exclusive until it goes to PC. You know what I mean?
So timed exclusive.
They're all timed exclusives for the most part. Anyway, last week we bet on what the Metascore of Maneater would be on Metacritic for PC.
Oh, yeah.
Matt, because you won the bet, you get to give your favorite epic quote to end the podcast.
And you know what? It's great because I find this quote hilarious from Resident Evil 4. But I'd like to dedicate this quote to all the review bombers who review bomb Doom Eternal and then haven't changed their review. In the words of Lord Sadler, writhe in my cage of torment, friend. Actually, I don't know if he said friend. And I'm going to err on the side of caution. Writhe in my cage of torment. You review bombing fucks.
Bye.
Bye.